Rise of Anti-Americanism and the Pro-China Sentiment. Part 2. Mehmet Emin Hazret. Anti-American sentiment is strong among both government and opposition bases in Turkey, particularly after the failed coup attempt in 2016. Within this atmosphere, China is increasingly perceived as the power standing against the West. Some opposition factions, especially leftist and nationalist groups, view opposing Western propaganda about Uyghurs as an anti-imperialist stance. Meanwhile, the government, already in conflict with the US and Europe, prefers to maintain a friendly posture towards China. Summary: criticizing China risks being labeled a puppet of the West in domestic politics. Collapse of the media economy and the importance of Chinese resources. Since 2018, the Turkish media sector has faced an economic crisis. Declining advertising revenues. Shrinking newspaper circulations. Financially struggling television channels. China stepped in with sponsorships and advertising deals, offering vital financial lifelines to many media outlets. Thus, both pro-government and opposition media increasingly accepted China-supported content and projects. For financially vulnerable outlets especially, Chinese partnerships became essential. Summary: financial desperation sidelined media ethics, normalizing compliance with China's boundaries. Success of China's soft power strategy. Instead of hard propaganda, China now employs soft power strategies globally. Cultural exchanges. Tourism. Education, such as Confucius Institutes. In Turkey, China avoids direct pressure and instead uses indirect persuasion, partnerships, and symbolic gestures. This approach creates voluntary self-censorship within media organizations. Summary: without applying overt censorship, China successfully fostered media loyalty through economic and diplomatic relationships. Decline of the Uyghur cause's strategic importance in Turkey. Between 1990 and 2010, the Uyghur cause enjoyed strong public support in Turkey. However, over the last decade, visibility of the Uyghur issue has drastically declined in Turkish media. Uyghur voices have been increasingly silenced. Some political groups began labeling the Uyghur cause as a Western conspiracy. Consequently, the perception took hold that there's nothing to lose by ignoring the Uyghurs. Summary: the Uyghur issue was strategically weakened, making pro-China media positions easier to justify. The bigger picture. Normally clashing over every political issue, both pro-government and opposition media in Turkey have moved in silent coordination when it comes to China and the Uyghur issue. Key reasons for this convergence include the vital need for Chinese economic support, fear of being stigmatized as pro-Western if China is criticized, financial appeal of Chinese-sponsored projects and advertising, effective use of soft power by China to foster compliant narratives, the systematic erosion of public sensitivity to the Uyghur cause. Thus, even media outlets that appear to be fierce enemies in domestic politics have quietly cooperated in covering up the reality of the Uyghur genocide. Silencing of the Uyghur diaspora and public apathy in Turkey. Suppression of the East Turkestan cause in Turkey. Limited impact of civil society organizations. Although several Uyghur associations and platforms exist in Turkey, these organizations face severe financial difficulties, have limited access to mainstream media, are largely left without political support. They have been unable to develop the institutional capacity needed for effective international lobbying. Public mobilization efforts are mostly confined to small groups and social media campaigns. Result: the Uyghur diaspora has remained largely invisible within Turkey and has failed to create a significant public presence. Limited political support. Only a few courageous members of parliament and political leaders, notably from the Y Party, Saadet Party, and Gelecek Party, have persistently raised the East Turkestan issue. However, major parties, including both the ruling party and the main opposition, have either ignored the issue entirely or limited themselves to symbolic statements. Major political campaigns and public initiatives have been deliberately suppressed to avoid jeopardizing economic and diplomatic relations with China. Result: At both parliamentary and public levels, the voice of Uyghurs has been systematically muted. Media's neglect. Protests led by Uyghur women in front of the Chinese consulate in Istanbul, under the slogan "Where is my family?" have continued for years across all seasons. Yet these protests have received almost no coverage in mainstream Turkish media. This silence has been evident not only in pro-government outlets but also among opposition media. At the same time, the same media organizations enthusiastically broadcast China's portrayals of life in Xinjiang, such as dance performances, agricultural projects, and depictions of a happy life. Result: real human stories have been suppressed while artificial, state-approved narratives have been amplified. Turkey's weakening international position. Turkey's silence on the Uyghur issue has also attracted international attention. While countries like Canada, the United States, the United Kingdom, and Germany have officially recognized the Uyghur genocide, Turkey has failed to take any meaningful political action. Paradoxically, the country hosting the largest Uyghur diaspora has become one of the least active in applying diplomatic pressure on China. Result: Turkey missed a historic opportunity to lead the cause of East Turkestan and has regressed to a passive stance in the global human rights movement. Overall assessment. Despite hosting a strong Uyghur community, Turkey failed to transform this into an effective platform for solidarity against China's oppression. This vacuum was further deepened by China's media propaganda and economic pressure strategies. Instead of confronting the harsh realities, Turkish public opinion has been placated with narratives such as Xinjiang is developing. This silence allowed China to continue its cultural genocide in East Turkestan virtually unchallenged. Conclusions and recommendations: combating Chinese propaganda and safeguarding information integrity in Turkish media. Key findings since 2017: China has implemented systematic demographic engineering, cultural genocide, and assimilation policies in East Turkestan. To soften its tarnished image, China launched an extensive global media propaganda campaign, heavily targeting Turkey as well. Various Turkish media outlets, both pro-government and opposition, have, either directly or indirectly, benefited from Chinese financial support, advertising and sponsorship agreements, ready-made content services, sponsored journalist trips to China, collaborative media projects. As a result, the term East Turkestan has been replaced with Xinjiang in Turkish media. Coverage of Uyghur genocide and repression has dwindled. Narratives emphasizing development and prosperity in Xinjiang have proliferated. Folkloric portrayals of Uyghur culture have been used to create a false image of normalization. Outcome: a one-sided, pro-China narrative dominates Turkish media, significantly impairing public access to the truth. Risks: misinformation of the public, weakening of independent journalism, erosion of Turkey's strategic reflexes, decline of ethical standards in media. Recommendations: establish media transparency laws. All media outlets should disclose any foreign financial support or content partnerships clearly. Strengthen journalism independence. Professional training programs should be offered to help journalists identify and resist manipulative content. Launch public awareness campaigns. NGOs, academics, and independent journalists should collaborate to inform society about the Uyghur plight and China's media strategies. Support the Uyghur diaspora and human rights organizations. Testimonies and real-life stories of Uyghurs must be amplified through media channels. Create academic and legal monitoring mechanisms. Turkish universities and think tanks should publish independent reports on China's influence in the media, and international legal actions against human rights abuses should be supported. Final manifesto. Truth cannot be censored. Media freedom in Turkey can only be preserved by exposing all forms of external pressure and manipulation. Even if the Uyghur voice is silenced, the truth will eventually reach the conscience of humanity.